It's Ken Harbaugh with the MeidasTouch Network reporting from Ukraine. That's Kyiv's city center in the background. We just had another long night of air raid sirens. The last one just stopped a few minutes ago. So I thought I'd take a moment to check in. I had an extraordinary visit to Chernobyl that I want to share with you. Everyone, of course, knows Chernobyl as the site of the world's worst nuclear accident. But in today's Ukraine, it is also a battlefield. It was one of the first areas targeted by Putin's invading forces. And even after they were driven out by a Ukrainian counterattack, the Russians continue to this day to send drones and even teams of saboteurs to wreak havoc. For the full story, check out the MeidasTouch Substack. We had to move rather quickly around Chernobyl, so this is a collection of brief takes and some still photos with narration. And thank you so much to everyone who has subscribed to the Ken Harbaugh Show on Substack. You make reporting trips like this possible. Here's my report from Chernobyl, Ukraine. Ken Harbaugh with Valor Media and the MeidasTouch Network along a trench system near the border. We're just outside Chernobyl. This was occupied Russian territory. There was constant fighting here during the early days of the war, and the remnants are all around us. If you look over my shoulder, there's a warning that there are mines still in this area. This is the legacy that the Ukrainians have to deal with from the Russian occupation. There's a danger mines sign right over my shoulder because the area is still littered with anti-personnel mines, and no one has maps of where these mines are. It's going to be a legacy that the Ukrainians deal with for decades and decades to come. Here's a checkpoint from the Russian position guarding the road, and then the trench system goes way back into the forest. Very little about Chernobyl inspires confidence in our species' capacity for long-term planning. The events that led to the disaster were a litany of bureaucratic mismanagement and short-sighted thinking, punctuated by rare moments of extraordinary courage. Today, the site stands as a monument to mankind's deeply irresponsible and likely temporary dominion over the planet. The isolated teams that guard what lays buried here have a lonely task. But they do have job security. Chernobyl's primary fuel was uranium-235, a radioactive isotope with a half-life of 700 million years. This site will need to be managed for a very long time. Ken Harbaugh with the MeidasTouch Network in front of a sign that says Pripyat. This was a fancy restaurant. Sorry for the beeping. Our Geiger counter is going nuts. This is a city just outside the perimeter of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. This is what 40 years of abandonment looks like, but amazingly, the Russian military continues to send sabotage patrols across the border to harass the Ukrainians and to probe their defenses. This is an active war zone in addition to being a radiological wasteland. A decaying sign in Russian Cyrillic reads Pripyat. My Ukrainian security escort, Valery, says, "First, we go to the restaurant. I have questions," but Valery is speaking to the driver and pointing directions. Farmland gives way to more forest. It's different this time. Lurking past the trees lining the road are massive buildings. Some of them tower above the leafy canopy, yet somehow they blend in. Vines and other foliage spread across their facades, and tree trunks grow through broken window frames, reaching skyward for sunlight. This city was once home to over 45,000 people. It served as a model of Soviet planning, a largely self-sufficient community with every amenity that a loyal comrade could want. Free daycare, transportation, even an amusement park with a Ferris wheel and bumper cars. And enough power thanks to the 4 massive 3,000-megawatt nuclear reactors that brownouts experienced in more distant parts of the Soviet Union could never happen here. Indeed, these reactors were so critical to the economy of this part of the empire that another 2 were planned. Construction on Reactor 5 was well underway when the disaster struck. Hey everyone, it's Ken Harbaugh. Quick break to say just how grateful I am for all of your support for this channel and for this show. We have a big reporting trip coming up to Ukraine. I could use your help. We have to cover the film crew, interpreters, fixers, security. It's a whole thing. but it is worth it to be able to share with you and others what is actually happening on the ground there. I just published a feature story in The Atlantic about my last trip where I embedded with the drone unit at the front. Click the link below for the full article, and we'll be putting out more great fact-based reporting over Substack. Please consider subscribing. Everything I make from Substack and Patreon goes back into this show. Thanks for the help. Our van comes to a stop in a wooded area next to a trail. Stepping out, I check the Geiger counter. A few stray clicks, but nothing too alarming. Restaurant, Valeri says, pointing down the path. It leads to a riverbank, dominated by an angular structure with an expansive view of the water. Its architecture suggests expensive. I wander through the rubble-strewn space into a room that takes my breath away. A massive stained glass window in the Soviet realism style makes up the entire outer wall. This is the dining room of what was once Pripyat's most exclusive restaurant. Too much of the stained glass has been destroyed to understand the whole story it is trying to tell. But I see a goddess, or the Soviet equivalent, planting and watering fields as a nuclear sun blazes beside her. This rivals anything I have seen in the churches of Europe in both its size and the emotions it stirs. This was a fancy restaurant during the disaster. Obviously hasn't seen a meal since 40 years now. But the amazing thing about this area is that it has a massive Ukrainian military presence, because the Russians constantly send sabotage teams across the border. They even launched a drone attack against, by the way, that clicking is the Geiger counter that is going off. If I hold it next to the mic, you can hear it. You can hear it clicking. They launched a drone attack against the reactor. Was actually targeting the nuclear waste repository that was set up to store the incredibly radioactive nuclear waste. Their hope was that it would hit it and release the equivalent of a dirty bomb here in Pripyat. That is the Russian way of war. We return to the van, where Valeri delivers a warning about where we are headed next. The hospital is dangerous, he says. It is also a grave. Be respectful and don't go in the basement. We park on the street and push our way through overgrowth towards a building looming out of the forest. There are huge Cyrillic letters crowning the rooftop, but I cannot read them clearly through the canopy. Valeri points to them. Zdоров'я народу, багатство країни. It means health to the people, richness to the state. I enter through a broken door while he waits outside. I am careful not to touch anything. One floor below us is one of the most radioactive unsecured places on the planet. In the hours following the disaster, firefighters charged with dousing the flames were treated in the rooms I am now walking through. Their highly contaminated clothes, boots, and helmets were carried to the basement. They are still there, piles of rotting clothes that will remain deadly to approach for hundreds of years. Massive buildings just loom out of the overgrowth. This was the hospital in Pripyat that the firefighters were brought to initially after responding to the explosion at the nuclear power plant. This is the hospital in Pripyat, just outside the boundary of the major power plant of Chernobyl, where the firefighters were brought after responding to the explosion. The air feels damp and heavy, and black mold grows in large patches on the walls. Chunks of plaster crunch underfoot, and each room tells its own story of chaos before the hospital was abandoned. In one, glass test tubes lie scattered across the floor. In another, an open filing cabinet sprouts a weird fungus and moldy files litter the ground. Since the hospital was abandoned, only a handful of people have been inside. I understand what a rare opportunity this is. I know I'm supposed to be curious, to understand what happened, to explore the operating theaters and recovery rooms, and imagine the frantic doctors and nurses doing whatever they could to save lives. But the building does not want me here. I can hear the ghosts of Chernobyl telling me, "Get out." I know now why Valeri waits outside.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.